What's going on, guys? Jared on an island here. Hopefully you guys can hear my mic working. Finally got my setup working right next to this fallen branch right here. Maybe I'll stand a little further back, maybe I won't. But today I got an emotional video for you guys, so I might put on my glasses, I might not, but here we go. I'm gonna talk about some things, and this is my point of view. I don't think that you have to follow it, but I just want to share my experience with it. And if you relate to it on any way, let me know. This is really what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to put my experience into reality, and hopefully either someone can relate to it and gain from it, or somebody can help me grow my perspective. But I want to talk about nihilism versus reality and where we fall in the middle of that. A lot of my content has to do with being centered around a sense of optimism for the future, knowing that we can do something, knowing that there's something we can do for the future. The problem is that most of my content as well shows a bleak reality, and it can become so easy. There's a very thin line of becoming just nihilistic, pessimistic, no hope of anything ever. The problem is, and I'm going to be very direct about this, we live in hell. We live in hell, and we're trying to create heaven out of hell. And that's a major problem. Our ability to do that is not only going to probably take generations, but it means that essentially your whole life is going to suck. And I'm laughing because it's painful, and that's the way I cope with that. But that is genuinely what I believe. Now, that doesn't mean everything is going to suck. And a lot of the reward is seeing how we win, how we slowly win. But right now we live in hell, we truly do. And it makes me think, this is where I want to get into maybe something that is more opinion. It makes me think, have we been devoid of God for so long that this is what hell's like, and do we deserve it? We didn't choose to be born into this world. At least most people don't believe that. Some people have the idea that our souls chose to be born at this specific time. They kind of consented into becoming life when our souls were pre-made, I guess. And I'd love to hear more about that opinion if you have it. But to me, it seems like we didn't choose to be here specifically. And now that we're burdened with this existence in a way, which I wouldn't say we're completely burdened, but let's just say we're burdened with this existence. Now it's our responsibility of what is to do with it. And that's a challenging concept for a lot of people. A lot of people believe that karma is ultimately the decider of what happens to you and how you're reborn. Some people have the idea of reincarnation and the idea that everything's fair on this ultimate scale. What comes to you is a consequence of something you did. Everything's ultimately your fault. Sadly, I want to say that's true. And sadly, because we are all sinners to the point where a lot of this is our own fault. Now that I've got those opinions out of the way, of course, I'm going to offer a solution. Just like I said, how it's going to be our responsibility for the whole lifetime. I'm going to give you what is essentially one of the many purposes of life. And this is genuinely like the answer to life right here. And that is because we have this ability to control our karma and what comes to us through our own actions, we can redeem ourselves through good work. And there's going to be a priority, a hierarchy of what good work looks like. This is the number one priority in your life. The trauma that you received as a kid, you have to do everything in your power, not even to completely do the reverse of it as you grow older, but just to not do it. That is literally your number one goal in life, to not repeat the trauma that you had as a kid. And that doesn't mean your parents had to traumatize you. That doesn't mean that you had to go through some major sort of thing that completely ruined your life. But it does mean that all of those little things that changed you because of your environment, you have to not do as an adult. You have to figure out a way to make sure that as an adult, you are not releasing the same sort of negative energy you received as a kid onto the world. And generationally, we see a persona be created from the trauma that generation received. We all know the stereotypes about boomers. It's the easiest one to see. Boomers have an ego that causes them to not look for solutions. They want to talk about the problem, embrace the problem, and then act like they're better than the problem without ever solving it. And we get to see that because we're not them, of course, but we have our own set of problems that is going to be the next level of trying to solve. For Gen Z, it's most likely going to be our lack of empathy that is going to be our downfall. When we have Gen Alpha come around and then Gen Beta, they're going to look at us and have the exact same persona idea that we have for boomers, that we have for millennials and Gen X. And we're going to, if we truly care about the future, not just our life when we get older, we will have to do something about that. We will have to act better than previous generations. And that is going to suck. That is going to be painful. That is going to be something that we're going to struggle with every day, every second of our lives. Because right now, our lack of empathy also causes us to be completely helpless. It causes us to be completely helpless, like a helpless rat. Well, I've talked a lot about this. Dr. Ray Peat talks a lot about this. The work of being a helpless rat, of feeling like you can do nothing to change the world, is a real feeling, and a lot of things cause this, whether it's the inflammation that we receive from the systematic pressures of our life via food, the system itself, work, whatever crisis is going on. But our ability to step out of that and see progressive change over time is how we get out of this. Now, I've talked about before the pyramid of how to get out of this, which is like, fixing your health, removing cortisol from everyday life. Getting out of stressful environments is the number one thing. But after that, you have to take the next big step. There's always going to be another bigger mountain in this. It's extremely sad to see. How Gen X, millennials have failed in this. They're doing the exact same thing that they blame boomers for. Boomers were blamed because the hippie movement was such a psyop into believing that something was being changed that they completely gave up on the idea of success. They just kind of got what they needed in the short term. And when they got their houses, when they got their wealth from working, they hit retirement age, then they completely give up on fixing society because they believe it's all fixed after the hippie movement. And now you have Gen X and millennials doing the same sort of thing when it comes to being politically correct. They believe that as soon as we get terms right, as long as we start saying the right things, then we're good. For boomers, it was as soon as I get my things in order, then we're good. Now it's as soon as we start saying the right things, we're good. And now Gen Z, I'm not too sure how to say where we're feeling good at, but it seems like to me, we're reverting even further than boomers, where it's like, well, as soon as I'm mildly dissociated, I'm good. People really thought Gen Z was going to be the savior because we had access to internet. Internet has raped our minds to a point where there's no potential for you to be saved. There's no group where you're safe from the system. There's really no group. Even if you think you're based, you're constantly at war with not trying to get psyoped into something. And I hate using the term psyop because even the term psyop is a psyop at this point. It's a complete mental manipulation into believing that you have no control again. And here's the real world that Gen Z lives in today. We live in a world of plausible deniability. You are so useless. You are worth so little that your whole entire systematic life revolves around the fact that you can be able to deny anything because you've done nothing. that will impact yourself. Everything can be said, and now we're getting to the point where everything can be said, oh, that's just AI, oh, that's not even real, oh, that was never my responsibility, it was no one's responsibility, it was just everyone had a little part to play. Let's take a job, for instance. All the work you do, you try to get out of it, so that you say this by saying, well, I did enough to where I technically did what I needed to, but in case I didn't, I can blame it on something else. Everyone else in the corporate ladder says the same thing. And all the way up, no one's taking responsibility for the overall system of the business. And we hear conspiracy theories, if you're really deep into this, where it's like, oh, corporations are actually demons, the demonic entity of a business. Amazon is a demonic entity. This used to go around on Twitter a couple years ago. And it's like, no, you're trying to place the blame in a religious aspect again, so that it's not your own fault. And and honestly, it's no one's individual fault, because I can't just point to someone and say it's your fault. Actually, you know what? A lot of people kind of get it right where they say it's the CEO's fault. But no CEO is going to step out of the cultural norm of all society. If a CEO was serious, it would be like a dictatorship for a business, but it would be a just dictatorship in that it would be representative of the people who work for it and the customers. Sadly, because of the idea of the free market, we have this idea that we can live in between, once again, where nobody has to take responsibility for the non-free market ideas, like, let's say, tariffs, or just, cultural pressures that cause differences in supply and demand, from being based off the consumer to maybe being based off, manipulating the normal idea of something into being cheaper for the business. Like, let's say, using cheaper quality products and then convincing people that not only is it normal, but better for them. But they don't even need to do that. They can just straight up say, oh, this is just normal, deal with it. And people will fall for it. The ignorance and low IQ of people is a weakness, and we have to admit that. So with this plausible deniability, no one's able to take responsibility, and no one's able to, one, be blamed, which would be the easy part, but two, change things. If you were to run a business as a dictatorship, and how it's supposed to be, because right now it's like a politically correct fascism, I guess, as a corporation. This sounds so leftist to say, but I don't mean it in technically a 100% bad thing. But if someone were to do that, and it was to be in the best interest of their community, which would be the corporation itself, then maybe it would be pushed to an idea of success where everyone profits. A good example of this is NVIDIA, where all of their workers are practically millionaires now because they all own stocks. This wasn't intentional, but because of the system they created in the first place, they were able to skyrocket to success because everyone in the company felt like they were a part of a tribe. Okay, and that was like, they had a CEO who was the face of the company, who made heavy decisions, and then everyone profited all the way down, and they all felt that they were a part of something good and unique. A lot of startups have this success for the same reason. But for the majority of people, you're in adult daycare at work. So it isn't the case. And another example I want to talk about living in hell, okay? And a part of feeling like the helpless rat, and why I have sympathy for that, because we're all feeling it, is, let's take the idea of someone who works minimum wage, okay? If they work minimum wage, which in Texas is $7.49, okay? And a fast food meal costs, I'm going to go on the cheap end here, $11.50, or let's just say $12, right? They are having to work over an hour and a half for one meal. The average American tries to eat 3 meals a day. 3 times 11, 33. Okay, how many times does 7 go into that? More than 4. Okay, so you're having to work 4 hours for the meals of the day that you're working. Regardless of everything else, it's never been like this in history for people to have to work this much for so little. Everything that you see right now in terms of economic success of America is simply materialistic. Everything that you have to gain at this moment is just a difference between materialism for us in the third world. And slowly you're watching us crumble into a third world society. Social law is breaking day by day. You are constantly waiting for the video you saw on Twitter or TikTok or wherever else to happen to you in real life. Everyone is thinking the same thing, and no one is operating in a way that's healthy with strangers. This is why this idea of a schizophrenic society is becoming more commonplace. People are becoming paranoid. People are thinking that they're always being watched because they are. And they think, well, I'm not important enough to be watched, but if I try to become important, then I will be watched. And therefore, I shouldn't even try to become important. Once again, falling into the place of being useless. And we have sympathy for them. But here we are. And this is all on top of the fact that you still are human, and you still, as a human experience, as a natural human experience, are supposed to have all of these other negative things in your life that are healthy, like heartbreak, death, social problems between friendships, working, like there's still struggle, there's still healthy struggle that we still have to deal with on top of this. If you watch my previous video on overstimulation, I think I didn't go hard enough in that video, because we are so overstimulated. As soon as you wake up from the alarm, you're overstimulated. As soon as you talk to someone, you're overstimulated by the conversation, whether or not you know it. Even just looking around you, you're overstimulated. If you can hear the car horn honking in the background, that's overstimulating. You are not supposed to hear that in nature. So here we are, the woods. My next video is going to be about how the woods aren't natural. You don't see trees like you're supposed to. These are supposed to be giant trees. That's what I'll talk about. But I want to go back into the poor person thing, okay? They're working 4 hours a day. Let's just say 2 to 3 hours a day for their meals. So let's say 3 hours a day for their meals, okay? Let me make sure my mic's on, okay? So they get home after their 8 to 12 hour shift with an hour traffic, let's say 30 minutes to, 30 minutes from, okay? Then they have to do their chores because, you know, that's what you're supposed to do to maintain a home. They may have a family, which they should have. And then they have their personal time, which doesn't include eating, going to the restroom, showering. So you're expected to make something of yourself. Like, this is why I don't like the self-help videos directly, because you're expected to make something of yourself. You're expected to improve yourself after slaving away for your food of the day and for your maintenance of everyday life with your materialism. You're expected after that to do even more to get ahead in the rat race, which is a funny humiliation term that they call it, so that you can get more stuff, because you still won't feel important enough to change anything in the world. That's what you're telling me right now. You're telling me I'm supposed to want to live this life? That's funny. That's a good joke right there. I'm not doing that. Personally, I'm not doing that. So what will I do instead? Watch the next video and I'll tell you.